Number 10. After defeating Jake O'Brien at UFC 82, Andrei Arlovski parted ways with the UFC and fought in various other promotions across the world. Andrei Arlovski made his return in the UFC and defeated Brendan Schaub, Antonio Silva, Travis Browne and Frank Mir, building a solid 4-fight winning streak. He was on the brink of a title shot. He next faced Stipe Miocic at UFC 195 in a number 1 contenders bout, where he lost the fight by TKO in the first round. Number 9. Mark Hunt came into the UFC with a 5-fight losing streak. He faced Sean McCorkle at UFC 119, where he lost the fight by submission via straight armbar. The UFC offered him a lot of money to buy out his contract to make him leave the promotion, but Mark Hunt was willing to prove everyone wrong. He went on and defeated top UFC heavyweights Ben Rothwell, Cheick Kongo and Stefan Struve. He later fought against Fabricio Werdum for the UFC interim heavyweight title at UFC 180, where he lost the fight by TKO in the second round. He has also victories over Antonio Silva and Frank Mir. Number 8. Ben Rothwell made his UFC debut against Cain Velasquez at UFC 104 and lost the fight by TKO in the second round. He went on and had an unimpressive record of 2-3 in the promotion. He started his comeback and finished Brandon Vera and Alistair Overeem by TKO and finished both Matt Mitrione and Josh Barnett by a go-go choke. He was only 1 or 2 fights away from a title shot. His impressive winning streak would come to an end when he faced Junior Dos Santos at UFC Fight Night 86, where he lost the fight by a unanimous decision. Number 7. Back in 2011, Matt Brown was on the verge of getting cut from the UFC roster as he had lost his last 3 fights. He re-evaluated his training and made a stunning comeback, putting together a 7-fight winning streak with notable wins over Jordan Meehan, Eric Silva and Stephen Thompson. He then faced Robbie Lawler at UFC on Fox 12 in the number 1 contenders bout, where he lost the fight by a unanimous decision. This fight showed that he could hang with one of the best welterweights in the world. Number 6. After failing to get his UFC lightweight title from Benson Henderson and failing to win the UFC featherweight title from Jose Aldo, Frankie Edgar was on a 3-fight losing streak. He would have to start from the bottom, defeating all contenders to earn himself another title shot. He put together a 5-fight winning streak with victories over Charles Oliveira, BJ Penn, Cub Swanson, Uriah Faber and Chad Mendes. He later fought against Jose Aldo for the interim UFC featherweight title at UFC 200 and lost the fight by a unanimous decision. Number 5. Alistair Overeem made his UFC debut against Brock Lesnar at UFC 141, where he won the fight by TKO in the first round. After winning the fight, many expected him to destroy all the heavyweights in the division, but that wasn't the case. He lost his next 2 fights by TKO against Antonio Silva and Travis Browne. He defeated Frank Mir and lost again to Ben Rothwell by TKO. After going 2-3 in the UFC, he changed his fighting style, taking his time in the octagon. He put together a 4-fight winning streak with victories over Stefan Struve, Roy Nelson, Junior Dos Santos and Andrei Arlovski. He later fought Stipe Miocic for the UFC heavyweight title at UFC 203 and lost the fight by TKO in the first round. Number 4. Fabricio Werdum was released after his knockout loss to Junior Dos Santos at UFC 90 and fought in Strikeforce, where he famously submitted Fedor Emelianenko by a triangle choke. Fabricio Werdum made his return in the UFC and put together a 5-fight winning streak with victories over Roy Nelson, Mike Russo, Antonio Nogueira, Travis Browne and defeated Mark Hunt for the UFC interim heavyweight title. He was set to face then heavyweight champion Cain Velasquez at UFC 188, where he won the fight by a guillotine choke in the third round, becoming the new UFC heavyweight champion of the world. He recently lost his title against Stipe Miocic by knockout at UFC 198 and recently defeated Travis Browne by a unanimous decision at UFC 203. Number 3. Rafael dos Anjos had many ups and downs in his UFC career. During 2012, he was determined to make a fresh start in the division. He went on, putting together a record of 8-1 in the lightweight division with notable victories over Donald Cerrone, Benson Henderson and Nate Diaz. He earned himself a title shot against then UFC lightweight champion Anthony Pettis at UFC 185. He won the fight by a unanimous decision, winning the UFC lightweight belt. He went on to successfully defend it against Donald Cerrone and recently lost the belt to Eddie Alvarez at UFC Fight Night 90. Number 2. After losing to Evan Tanner at UFC 50, Robbie Lawler parted ways with the UFC and fought in various other promotions across the world. Robbie Lawler made his UFC return and defeated Josh Koscheck, Bobby Volker and Rory McDonald, which earned him a title shot against Johnny Hendricks at UFC 171, where he lost the fight by a unanimous decision. He then defeated Jake Ellenberger and Matt Brown and faced Johnny Hendricks again at UFC 181, where he won the fight by a split decision, becoming the new UFC welterweight champion of the world. He successfully defended his title against Rory McDonald McDonald and Carlos Condit, but recently lost his title to Tyron Woodley at UFC 201. Number 1. Dominick Cruz came from the WEC and was promoted to UFC champion after defeating Scott Jorgensen by a unanimous decision. He defended his title twice against Uriah Faber and Demetrius Johnson. He was set to defend his title against Uriah Faber again at UFC 148, but he was forced to pull out after tearing his ACL. He was set to unify the titles against the interim champion Renan Barão at UFC 169, but was forced to pull out again due to tearing his groin. The UFC stripped him of the title. After nearly 3 years away from the sport, he made his comeback against Takeya Mizugaki, who was on a 5-fight winning streak and was ranked 5th in the UFC bantamweight rankings. They both fought at UFC 178, where Dominick Cruz won the fight by TKO in the first round. The UFC president Dana White announced that Dominick Cruz would face then champion TJ Dillashaw next. However, Dominick Cruz tore his ACL in his other knee and was sidelined for the rest of the year. Dominick Cruz finally made his return at UFC Fight Night 81 and faced then UFC bantamweight champion TJ Dillashaw, where he won the fight by a split decision, winning back the title. He then successfully defended his title against Uriah Faber in a rubber match at UFC 199 and won the fight by a unanimous decision.